Good morning. This is the Eastham Affordable Housing Trust meeting on Thursday, February 13th. It is a hybrid meeting. People can join in on Zoom. The meeting is being recorded and will be available on the town website at eastham.ma.gov. So call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Let's review the minutes of the December 12th, 2024 meeting. Does anyone need a copy? I have extra.
They're in the packet.
In the packet, yep. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Sending myself.
Right. We wanted to do a brief update on the zoning work. Did you bring a presentation or you want me to just talk about it? Or do you want to
I
talk about
have some slides.
it? Okay.
Do you want me to go through them or do you just talk more formally about it? Yes.
Is this the short slide version?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Do you mind?
No,
That'd be good. Amy's heard it, I think, but never hurts to hear it again. The zoning,
Oh, yes.
yes, but we're,
Nope. Can't hear too much because.
no. And so as Paul's pulling it up, the zoning task force has been working for the last year on new zoning for the DCPCs, so which is basically from Old Orchard Road to Wellfleet Line right along the Route 6 corridor. We have three components, three documents. One is a report that summarizes why we were doing what we were doing, how we did it, and what the major recommendations are. We have proposed changes to the bylaws themselves that would go to town meeting for approval, and that include all of the proposed zoning changes. And then we have another document that's the guidelines for the planning board that include the form-based code material. That doesn't have to go to town meeting. It can be changed by the planning board as needed. So it doesn't hold. It's not part of the actual bylaw. We've kept the two separate to make the form-based code pieces more flexible and easier to change if we have whoopses or things that come to our attention that need to be changed. Whereas the zoning obviously has the force of being part of the bylaw. So with that, Paul's done a great job of putting together a nice summary.
So thank you for so that's kind of structurally how we're doing the documents and how the paperwork part will go. Big picture, this zoning is set up to try to get the Northeast Ham Village Center district up and running. So when the time comes for the town to do RFPs for Tea Time, Town Center Plaza, and when all the private properties, if and when they want to redevelop or do things, the zoning will be in place so that we can get to the end result, which is a more cohesive village center layout. So the task force has kind of been going with this live, work, play. It's kind of the mantra, and that's what we're working towards. The form-based code is really structural changes to the zoning, is introducing these elements called form-based code. And it's really about putting, and I just always refer to it as the recipe book. So it's like charts, graphs, tables, saying these are the roof forms that we want to see. These are the types of materials you want to use. These are the size of the buildings, the dimensional things, so that you get a cohesive village center again over time as things develop. Excuse me, with a predictable development pattern. We're not trying to dictate every last detail because we don't want cookie cutter, but we're trying to outline the basic structure of things. And then within that, whatever you do with the property, you'll have, some latitude and some creativity to do what you want, but the basic recipe is there. And you follow the recipe, again, we'll get predictable development and also the regulatory process should be smoother and easier, so predictability, so especially for developers and property owners, they look at this and say, they're telling me. What they want me to build or how they want me to build it, if I can do my own thing within these parameters. There shouldn't be a lot of red tape to go through when you have to go through the board processes.
What does it say above that top one? The,
Here,
yeah,
oh, the,
Is it intentional?
traditional,
Traditional.
traditional zoning, and this is just illustrating traditional zoning. It's more of a blanket, and because it's really dealing with the uses.
Right.
Industrial here,
Conventional.
residential here, conventional zoning, thank you, Devin. And this kind of illustrates what Carolyn was saying. We have conventional zoning that just deals with segregating the uses. We are introducing design standards, but then the form-based code is really how does the zoning relate to the streetscape, to the relationship between buildings and properties.
And it's important to note for all of this. This is only for the DCPC. Oh, sorry. It's important to note for all of this that it's only for the DCPC area. So it doesn't, the other 90%, I don't know the exact number, but 90% of the town, this doesn't apply to. It also doesn't apply to any existing building, existing
And it doesn't
houses.
reply to residential properties, it's only commercial.
It applies to you'll see, it applies to everything in the DCPC.
There are residential properties in the DCPC, but those get handled under the residential zoning district.
So anyone who has an existing property, business, house, retail, this does not
Unless they're gonna-
they're grandfathered in, unless they want to do it. They do not have to make any retroactive changes. So we want to reassure everybody
Yeah.
that this isn't trying to say you have to suddenly make a lot of
Is
changes.
it kind of like ADA where there's a trigger, like if you do so much?
Yes. Yes.
Well, you know.
Yeah, there's a
Quantum of,
threshold for triggering these things, and it's also kind of depending on the size of the project. The regulatory process, it's kind of like a ladder up, so you could do small projects without going to the full planning board, basically an administrative approval with minimal requirements for plans and things. But then as the size of the scope of the project goes up, you might do a site plan review, which goes to the planning board, and then for larger projects, it would be a full special permit. And the difference to note between that is when you get to a special permit, it becomes a discretionary approval, which basically means the planning board does have the ability to say no, if not arbitrarily, but if they determine that this project isn't fitting in with the bylaw, something, clearly not with the dimensional requirements thing, or it's just not in the best interest of the community. It might be the type of business or something. It's gonna have detrimental impact on the local economy or other, whatever. So that's an important distinction. The other two levels lower down, it's not really the board. It's basically you have to get to yes. There's some negotiation, there's some going through, making sure all the regulations are being followed, you're following the recipe, but at the end of the day, the board can't, if it comes to an impasse, the board has to basically, you gotta work together to get to yes. Special permit is a little more discretionary, so.
And the other thing that's built in, that's a change, that it is now required that in the pre-project stage, that the person proposing the project has to meet with the town planning department.
has to work with the town.
Meet with
Yeah,
them,
okay.
and so go over, this is the rules, this is what you're proposing, so that you can have some early
And it's just not show
discussions.
the building department and then get shot down. because
Yes,
they didn't fit with anything. Yeah,
or someone misunderstanding what the
got it.
it is, but also there may be opportunities to shape things so that it's a much smoother
Easier for them,
project
right.
for them before they spend a lot of money on design and architects and surveyors and all kinds of stuff.
How is that triggered? Like if, you know, is it when someone buys a property and maybe we know they're thinking of developing, do we reach out to them? Or how is it triggered that they come to us?
It could be, I think a lot of times it's gonna be just someone's gonna do the project, they're gonna apply for a building permit and it'll come through and it gets flagged as this is a project that's gonna need some review. And then we would contact them and say, let's meet preliminarily. Other times it could just be, you know, people, I think a lot of times people, unless they're totally new to the town, they know that they're gonna have to go to some level of review, so.
Before they do a building.
Yeah, so like, a
Before they
lot of times
pull
they
the sign.
they contact my department on their own, because they know likely they're gonna need something, so. It's kind of like a combination, but I think,
And after a while, word of mouth will make it clear with architects and engineers and those kinds of people say, have you done this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so we're not rewriting everything, actually, it seems like a lot of changes, but. We're not starting from scratch, and a lot of the changes are actually just taking the current language and reworking them into tables and charts, so it's a little clearer. And pretty much everything that we did put in new is based on model bylaws and best practices from the Cape Cod Commission. And also recommendations from the past like 10 years of various planning studies and everything we've been doing in town, so this is like. Been building up over the years, all this planning, all this outreach, all these public meetings, it's kind of like culminating, if we get the zoning passed, this creates the framework. That's gonna let everything else kind of flow from there, so. Just kind of quickly, the task force, as you all know. Lots of meetings.
Not anymore, are you?
now,
No. Lots of meetings. Lots of discussions, we're meeting with local businesses, for-profit developers, nonprofit developers, talking with folks in other towns. We had the design charrette a while back, we had good turnout there, so again, trying to like make sure this is based on reality and that people. Things that we're hearing from the public. So just some slides on the specific changes. We are recommending that we change some specific properties, the zoning, the zoning, district for that, so Teton property. Is currently, limited commercial and the DCPC is made up of 6 sub-districts, so we're recommending that the Teton. Be changed to transition commercial, it provides for more uses and more flexibility and more density and really. In order, if the town wants to move forward with the recommendations that came out of the Teton report and then the follow-up study from that. It actually wouldn't, most of that wouldn't be able to happen if it's zoned the way it is now, so transition commercial would actually allow for. More of that vision to be reality, so we want to change that. And then, on the highway, basically the Shell station and the Nickerson garage. Those are currently zoned office residential. And that's the least intense use allowed. It's really supposed to be more residential, primarily residential. But those 2 properties are right on Route 6. And they're right in the core village area, so. And on either side, or to the north, it's transition commercial, so it's kind of like not balanced. So we wanted to move those 2 properties into transition commercial, so basically it would line up with the rest of that side. And fill out more, so it would just be an imbalance where you have right across the street, the most intense use core commercial where we want all like the highest concentration of your businesses and everything. And then directly across the street, it would be like the least intense, and it just didn't seem to balance, so. That would change, and then. The properties along Brackett Road, are currently limited, we want to move those into the core commercial again, and. The goal for Brackett Road over time is that that's really where. The traditional Main Street could happen. Route 6 is always gonna be what it is, and we're gonna try to improve that. But Brackett Road is really where you would see, like, we could really make that into like, you know, sidewalks, street trees. A strong storefront, you know, strong streetscape with this, with everything pulled closer to the street, so you don't have the parking. And so we wanted to expand that ability. Down to the end of bracket, really where it gets cut off at the bike path. So again, over time, those properties would have more opportunity. More ability to do things with their property in the future if they want to redevelop or add uses.
I think on the second circle, for the highway ones, it says OR, I think you mean that to be TC. Inside the circle,
OR.
it was OR, but now you're gonna make it
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah, now it's green there, see on
Yeah.
the shell and the Nickerson.
It'll go to transition.
Yeah, okay.
Some adjustments to the land use table. Again, traditional zoning is focused more on the uses and segregating those uses, the different areas of town. Form-based code, more focused on the built environment, how it looks and feels. We obviously need to keep a use table, but we want to try to simplify it. So a lot of the commercial categories, and this is just a big, long list of all the uses, but you can never list everything under the sun, obviously, so. But we're trying to consolidate, just for example, we have convenience store, gift shop, barber shop, all listed out. All those things essentially are retail sales and service, so you can kind of consolidate some of these and shorten up the list, but at the same time, we are adding in specific things, more specific things for the housing. Because we want to make sure that that people understand, like multifamily housing, townhouses, apartments, those things are specifically allowed. And then a couple of things and the thing with the use table is. We did want to shorten it up, but you want to be explicit about what you definitely don't want. So that there's no loopholes, so you want to be able to, so we did add things in like new, so new gas stations, new drive-throughs, some certain things like that, which are not compatible with the vision of the village center. They're high traffic generators.
So they're not allowed.
They're not allowed. So currently. So, any gas station that the gas stations that are out there, they can continue to operate, no problem as is. Until. For as long as they're in operation, that's fine. We really only have the one drive-through is at the bank. That can continue to operate until, for as long as it's there, and really currently we don't allow drive-throughs anyways, except for banks, so all we really did on that front is. You can't, if a new bank came in, they couldn't have a drive-through.
Yeah, there's two.
Oh, yeah, the Stevens Bank has one too, right, yeah, that's right, so really those are. So it's actually not a huge change, but. When you think about the future, like. There's a business model for drive-through stores,
Oh, yeah.
drive-through, I've seen them in other parts of the country,
Stores.
drive-through.
Yeah.
Package store, so we wanted to just be ahead of that
Got it.
model, so.
So what would that mean for the Nickerson gas station? Could they, since it hasn't been a gas station for.
Well, that property, that use has expired on that property
Yeah,
long ago.
So they couldn't put a gas
yeah.
station there again.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's correct.
Art exhibit.
A big part of this zoning is, like I said, making sure that we get incentivized the housing that we need, multifamily. Basically anything that's not a single family dwelling, so those specific uses are allowed by right.
Paul, can you just really just touch on, the Cape Towns have now implemented the state ADU regs as of like the first week of February, does that apply to East Ham as well?
Yes, yep. So the regs are kind of as a blanket. Regulation in effect, but all the individual towns have to update their zoning bylaw, so we'll have a warrant article.
Update our.
For May.
bylaw.
Largely, our current bylaw largely complies with what the state is doing. We gotta have, a few little technical adjustments, but it won't be a huge
So
change.
it's not a big alteration or a big relaxation of the rules that we already have.
No,
Not much at
no,
all.
the biggest thing is just that you can't require a special permit, we'll go back to what I said, the special permit is discretionary. So a board could say, no, you can't have this, that's a big change, the state is basically, everybody's entitled by right to have an ADU if you meet. Septic, environmental, you're still accountable to the dimensional controls, your setbacks.
The dimensions did change a little bit though, didn't they, in the state, one about the size of it?
The physical size of the, yes. Towns can have, you can allow larger than that, but you have to have a minimum size. But we're adjusting ours to be in alignment with what the state said, because it's basically 900 square feet or half, or 50% of the size of your principal
Right.
house.
Whichever.
We've
side.
had a few ADUs that have been kind of out of scale with the principal dwelling, and
They're supposed to be subordinate, right?
yeah, so I thought this was a good time to just kind of scale it back, and 900, so you could have over 900 square feet, but
You have to have a pretty big house.
we're trying to get most of them to
Not
be.
that big, but
And they should be subordinate in size and
Yeah.
scale to the house, so.
There was a lot done with the lot coverage rules with the zoning task force that got adopted. Where does that, how does that square
That's
with?
still in effect, so if you're maxed out on your lot coverage, you couldn't do the ADU. Unless
you
you
could do it
freed
within the
up,
house. You could do it within the
yeah,
house,
well,
just
yeah, if you
can't,
could free up, yeah,
Right.
you could free up interior space.
like,
to do
or
it
the
at-
garage,
yeah.
but you can't add.
Right.
If you've already maxed out.
Right. Or if you're gonna do it, the basements don't count towards your site coverage anyway, so even if you could retrofit one into your basement. Then that's always an option.
So there will be a warrant article on the ADUs. We reviewed it this week at the zoning task force meeting. So we'll be in compliance with the state.
So we're building in some things to try to incentivize certain housing. And one of those things is a height bonus. So right now, the current height limit in town is 30 feet. We're proposing that in certain situations and in certain areas, you could go to 35 feet or 39 feet. That's only if you're doing a multifamily or a mixed use building, and those residential units you're creating are year-round rentals, workforce, or seasonal house, workforce housing, or deed restricted affordable. We're trying to mitigate large scale luxury, high-end housing. So those, you can still build those, if that's what your deal is, but you're not gonna get the benefit of the height bonuses. I do wanna point out the 39-foot is for a very limited area. That is for, if you're gonna do that, it would have to be setback 100 feet from Route 6. It has to be, there's a lot of guardrails on that. But I will say, a lot of the research we did when we talked to the developers and the housing nonprofit developers. There's a certain, for these projects to pencil out, there's a certain sweet spot with the number of units and how you can do this. And specifically, we talked with the folks that did the province post development in P-Town, which is.
What's it called?
Community
Province
builders,
Post, community builders.
community builders, doing province.
We had a lot of discussions with them, and if you go and see that development, go online and see it. That was a very successful project that got really sailed through with the permitting and got. The tax credits and the funding from the state, and because. It was 3 buildings. At 39 feet high. And they had the number of units they could put in there, and it made that project pencil out really nicely, and. So was a model that we thought, we wanna make sure that we could do that type of project. But that's not necessarily something you want right in the core commercial, right at Bracket, Route 6 or whatever, so. The carve out for that is really supposed to be. Away from Bracket as you go north and south into that limited commercial district where the properties there, again, this all depends on private.
Right.
How private properties wanna be used, but. There's properties that are large, that could accommodate that. And you don't want them right on Route 6, you want them set back, so it becomes. Its own neighborhood there, with its own kind of roadway that would come in off Route 6. And so I just kind of, for people who might see this watching at home and everything, it's a very targeted area where we would allow this height bonus to that, because it's a big change. But that was an important point that we found, if we're ever gonna get the multifamily development that we need to meet the housing, we have to have some carve out where developer could do some type of that level of housing. And again, with the form-based code, it's meant to, yes, some larger buildings, some higher buildings, but the architecture's got to conform what we want, so that, yeah, it's not gonna be a box, it's gonna be the roof lines, the materials, all that kind of comes together, so that it's a balance.
I haven't been down to Orleans to check out their new, but everyone's really talked about that thing. It's very nice, where the bank was.
Yeah.
Right,
Those are 3-story, aren't they?
yes,
Yeah. I wanna go to, yeah.
19
Becky and I are gonna do a
west.
trip.
19 west.
And just when you look at the town pieces, tea time, there's a lot of competing interests for what that site should be used for. And if we're gonna accommodate multiple uses, but still be able to put housing, the only way to solve that is take out less horizontal space by going up, so you can get the more units without, and then that leaves room for
But
other potential things.
from the road.
Right, so that goes into the recipe of like, if you can cite it, and meet the setbacks and everything, so. That's just an important point. The other piece that we're putting into the bylaw is putting some guardrails on the sizes of the units. So if you're doing the townhouses or multifamily, again, we don't want all large scale, palatial condos and. So there's a chart in the bylaw that basically says there's a maximum unit size, and it's scaled to the type of building in the sub-district that it's in. It's not just like one number for the whole thing. But then there is a average unit size, and when we talk with the developers, it seemed to be reasonable to them. So that you can still have a range of unit sizes if you're doing a multifamily building. You can have some larger ones, some smaller ones, but overall, the average of all the units has to be in the middle. And again, so, it's gonna be more of the 600, 800, maybe 1,000, depending on the building type, whatever. And the feedback we got that was kind of a novel approach, and something that, they thought you could work through, because again, we want this to be realistic. Developers, they gotta make a profit, they gotta make this pencil out, so. We didn't wanna say you only can do 800 square feet every single year, you gotta have a range, so. That's an important piece that we're building to. Architectural standards, so there is a chart in there that talks about the types of materials. We do a lot, which is really trying to focus on traditional materials, but we do make allowances for other non-traditional materials as long as they're appropriate. So that's something you get into at the planning board level. But again, if you know you can use these traditional materials, that's fine. There's nothing to talk about when you go through the review. It's just like, but there is the capacity for that, and even the capacity, we're trying to limit things like vinyl siding and things, but we do even have some flexibility with that, so that you could use some of those types of materials on the side and the rear of a building with the proper, buffering and things. So there's some ability to have a discussion at the planning board level about, like, because these things may become real with cost of construction and everything. So again, we're trying to have some flexibility, but create the quality.
Metal.
I have to check in the chart. I think there is some,
I think there's some,
Some of the metal,
I think metal roofs and things, I think some of that's allowed. I'd have to double check exactly the chart, but. Environmental and landscaping standards, we haven't changed a whole lot. There's already good language in there, but we are kind of brushing up a little bit of it. There is specific, and things have changed over the last several years, so obviously we want to have some more specific requirements for EV vehicles, that minimum required spaces. We are limiting impervious surfaces and encouraging things like rain gardens and things, so, and this is also most of the DCPC, this district is in the water protection overlay district, so there's already some controls on the amount of impervious surface you can have, things like that, so we're trying to just like be cognizant of that overlap. At least 50% native species, so if you're doing new landscaping, so at least you have a minimum for that, and making sure we have good buffers between commercial and residential where they abut uses. We are proposing some new sign guidance in the bylaw. We have a sign code that covers the whole town, but we added in a section that's more specifically would just cover the DCPC. And again, this is just trying to get at making sure that the signage and the lighting is in harmony with the overall aesthetic that over time we're trying to get more of a traditional village center. So there are some specific things about signage in the bylaw just for this district. And then the roadway network kind of plays into the zoning and the whole vision for the future. So again, I mentioned like Brackett Road is really where we have an opportunity over time as things redevelop. You can really see that becoming a more traditional main street with a stronger streetscape, parking in the rear, so the shops and the restaurants and everything were up front, sidewalks, the whole feel. There's the ability now, I think we're really close to be able to have this connection between Brackett Road and T-Town. The town center plaza property actually has that right of way out to Brackett where you come up along the back of Cumbies and the bank. That's actually under the town's right of way. So we have the two ends. And there's really just a few properties in between, and we've been talking with those folks a lot over the past couple of years. And my feeling is everyone's open to the possibility and what that might provide. And I know this has kind of been the dream of a lot of people in town, that can get that parallel street, take some of the pressure off Route 6. So this is really just a rendering showing like if you can envision like coming up that roadway. All those businesses, I think what the zoning is going to allow is more flexibility with what you can do with your property. And if you have this, you have two street frontages. So you think about the future, like if people want to keep doing, and this actually, we worked with a traffic engineer. Like you could put some sort of roadway, it may be a 2-lane street, it may be a one-way, 1-lane street, it may be a bike walking path, it could be any combination of things, but there's room to put an actual full roadway layout without knocking down anyone's building, without disturbing anyone's existing building, so you can still do what you want. But if you're ever gonna redevelop or change your business model or whatever you're gonna do, this is the potential to have two street frontages. You could carve off the piece on the other side, on the north side, sell that off. The flexibility for the zoning would be you could do something there, or you could diversify, you could build housing on that side. So I think there's a lot of potential for folks that, you know, and some of these folks, we all know, longtime businesses and great things, but time goes on. I think this actually gives them more flexibility of, do I want to keep what I'm doing? That's fine. Maybe I'm gonna pass it on to the next generation. The kids are gonna run or sell out, whatever it's gonna do. This sets us up for more flexibility. And I think that's important for the business folks out there. And that's what I think everyone I've been meeting with kind of understands that. So the concept of this, I think everyone's on board. It's always the details of how this would happen, but that's kind of the next phase. If we get the zoning in place, that's kind of the next phase of planning. For my department is really, okay, how do we get into the details and make this work? So, but this is a really important piece of the zoning.
And an important part of this is, as you can envision looking at this, that the top of all of that is housing.
Yeah.
And it does two things. It creates more housing, but it also creates more customers for the businesses year round. Because they live around house, or people who work in the business.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So these could be mixed use buildings, they could be all residential, they could be townhouses, they could be top of the shop, it could be, and this is really getting to where you have a real neighborhood and a real village center, where you have that mix of uses. There's a store and there's an apartment above, and then there's a restaurant, and this connects to T-Town. So whatever element a component of tea time gets put to residential, then you have a cohesive neighborhood that in theory runs from Brackett into tea time. And you can walk along that area, and it's, and a big part of this too with the commercial frontage on Route 6 is we want to be able to have shared infrastructure. We don't want everyone as they redevelop or do or make improvements, everyone have to redo their parking. They gotta do a 20. I have a restaurant, so now I'm gonna have to do a 20 space parking, and then the next guy gotta do 10. We want shared parking, reduced curb cuts, shared circulation, so not everybody has, you know, the delivery trucks and the loading zones and the dumpsters, all that stuff. There's opportunity to have this stuff centralized, so not everyone's doing it. And then that's, you know, the potential for sharing the cost of putting that infrastructure in place.
What's the? You know, you talk about the housing over the top of the businesses. Is there any way to somehow deed restrict it, not necessarily as affordable, but as year round?
Yeah, so that goes to the height bonuses, so.
Right, the height bonus, but what if it's not the height bonus? What if it's like that, just the 2-story?
Well, actually, in that picture, the first one
I
is
guess
3
there
story.
is,
It's
yeah.
you can see the third
Yeah, I
story
do
with the
now.
dormers.
But say it is just 2-story, could we? And there's apartments over the top. Can we restrict that to year-round rentals?
Well, I mean, that's what we're doing with the bonus, so I mean, you could. Yeah, I mean, the same thing would apply if we just decided all second floor apartments we want, we could. I think the feeling on that was. That might be not quite realistic. And might be a little too onerous to do that, so that's why we kind of went with the height bonus, because that's the incentive to actually. Add that extra height to get an extra unit, which gives you an extra,
So the
Rental
people
unit
that
and
wanna
extra
go
source of
up to get more bang for their buck and
Right.
then.
right?
More income,
What's that?
more income.
Right,
And it's
right.
because it's year round, it's stable income.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
And for this area, you would only be able to go to 35, so that's this area we're talking about would not be eligible for
This
the
is
height.
like town center up.
This would be
Right.
between Brackett and Tea Time, the core commercial district, where we want that,
But once you get to tea time, you could do the 39 in the back,
yeah.
100 feet back.
Cause if you look at, like,
From
if you
Route
picture it
6.
like. The Brackett Road, Route 6 intersection in that immediate area up to Tea Time Brackett is the core, that's the core commercial district, that's where we're trying to. Again, if you envision like the traditional village center over time, that's where we want the strong streetscape, buildings closer. A little more density and have that. You know, people living and working and doing all that stuff, as you get north and south. The intent of the zoning is that it gradually reduces in intensity. Things are moved further back from Route 6, so it gets more, it's still commercial, but it gets more. Less intense, and so that's where we, you know, so. It still do some commercial, but things are pulled back. Further away from Route 6, because it's not the core, it's not, because you want that intersection to be like. Oh, I've arrived at the village center, you can physically see this, and then it.
Does that allow for the 35 feet in the core or just the 30?
30 feet, if you do the height bonus in the core, you could do the 35.
Oh, it does have the bonus in the core
35.
too, and
Yes.
that has the year round.
Yeah.
And then 39 once you're in the limited commercial.
So, you know, it doesn't. Like everything else, a balance, so if someone didn't care about the height bonus and they just wanna do what they're gonna do and they wanna do economy, we're not. We're not totally prohibiting that because it's a. But
Yeah.
trying to disincentivize it, but
Yeah.
saying you can do more and have more options if you choose to build the housing that we actually need, which is year-round rentals.
And there's more opportunity for housing and incentives at the lower end of Holmes Road.
Right,
There's a lot of undeveloped property back there.
Yeah,
And there's a, well, okay, so.
Yeah.
so that the other part is Holmes Road. That's our only industrial area and there is, I've heard a lot of feedback about there is need for more trade space. And this is really the only place it can go. So we want to protect that, but there's a lot of potential on Holmes Road, on what's there now, but then the end of Holmes Road is a huge undeveloped parcel. So we felt like, the task force felt like there's room to protect that trade space, industrial space, but also let opportunities for mixed use and multifamily in that area. So multifamily would be allowed in the trades space, but by special permit, again, because you want some control over that, like that, there has to be a balance. But if you think about, and also Holmes Road, what's there now is really underutilized. It could be, again, just think over time as people want to change what they're doing there, redevelop, reorganize their space. This is going to allow them to do more with the property they have, add maybe even, they want to keep their operation, they just want a metal building and everything, that's fine, but now I could add an two apartments above there. Or
And
further
that's-
down, I
Queens
could add,
has that in their
yeah,
Right.
labor room, yeah.
and then if that end of Holmes Road gets developed, subdivided or redeveloped in some way, that opens up a whole area. And we've been talking with the McGregors, so
Oh,
they're
great.
fully
And
aware
That
of
connects
this.
back to 6.
It can.
Yep, and so that's really the vision, so that gets to the connection between Holmes Road, bracket of Holmes Road out to Route 6. And this is an area where those larger multifamily buildings, maybe at 39 feet, could be back there. It's its own little neighborhood, it's adjacent to the bike path. It's off Route 6. And you're not reliant just on Route 6 with the traffic that it might, so you could have that alternative. And I know it's tough for us to envision a future of Holmes Road, we go up there now.
That's
Yeah,
direct.
it's a little rough up there, the roadway. But you gotta look at the 15, 20, 25 years as Holmes Road gets redeveloped, if people come in and do site plan review. Holmes Road could be, fixed up, sidewalks, street trees, there's no reason why it's an industrial zone, there's no reason why over time it can't be a very nice road. Where you can envision that the trade space stuff is happening with some residential mixed in. And again, as you go further out, it's more residential, so that's a key component, and this is also adjacent to. Place where we're trying to target these. Higher densities is gonna be adjacent to the wastewater.
Right.
That all comes together, and the bike path and this new road, so we think it can work without overburdening the traffic and. All that kind of stuff, or if they have to do an on-site treatment plant, if that's the model. There's room for that out there, so. Some of the-
No, I was just gonna say, we only have about 10.
Oh, yeah, sorry, so, that's the overview, we're gonna have a public information session,
Please.
the 26th at the library. We're taking a different approach to this, we're gonna have the first session will start at 4 to 5:30, we'll have a presentation and then Q&A. Then we're basically gonna do the same presentation at, 5:30. So that way. 5:30. You can show up at 4 or 5, or show up in the middle and stay through and you'll catch up on the whole thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna have. Childcare available.
Okay.
The library staff and the rec is gonna be for kids 5 and up. We're gonna have food. Pizza. Snacks, whatever, some fruit, cookies, whatever, so. We want to try to get parents out and have some flexibility and. Yeah, so that's the plan, so, hopefully we get a good turnout with some of the accommodations. Cape Cod Commission hearing, the commission has to sign off on all this, so that hearing is February 27th, we've been working with the commission hand in hand, so not anticipating any issues. And then our formal planning board hearing will be March 19th. And I'm trying to schedule some office hours for myself, so I can be down at the library. Periodically between now and town meeting, so folks that can't come to these meetings, they wanna come in.
Jackie was down there yesterday and had a great turnout. Too long. So, yeah.
And this all culminated at town meeting, where it has to get voted on, so
Right.
that's my.
Wow, thanks, Paul.
Any other questions, Jeff? Comments, questions?
I guess the only question, Paul, the 35-foot. Proposed restriction in the area that ties bracket to, tea time. Do we know if 35 feet, from a building code standpoint and from, as a practical matter, does that get you 2 stories of residential above your business, or, 35 feet does that? Okay. Good.
It'll give you the space needed to get that extra, well, yeah, or 2.5, 3 stories, you could do it, but really just however you configure, you could get that extra unit. That's really what we're trying to get to, is like you could squeeze out an extra unit
Right,
to have that.
so that's consideration was
Yeah.
made when they capped the
Yes.
35, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Or do a unit with a loft, maybe on a unit, but then that gives you some flexibility of size and space and what you could do for rent, so you get
Yep.
some.
Other questions or comments? Okay, good. Thank you, Paul, very much. Rachel, update on 580?
Yeah, we went to CPA last week and they are recommending the project. So we'll have some housing funds for that.
Good.
Working with the architect who's getting together a proposal so we can submit a request for proposals for bids after town meeting if they vote to approve the funds.
Good, excellent. The amended declaration,
So
Yes.
the town meeting funds that would get approved are for design or more? It's more than that.
Construction.
Yeah.
the whole thing,
Yeah, historic renovation and housing.
for the two. The amended declaration,
Yes, so, Hetch went to file a mortgage when they did, one of their housing emergency loan program, clients, and found out because this particular client's, I guess, property is filed with land court, we have to have the declaration of trust filed in land court, so I have that here for whoever can go up and see if Linda can notarize this form. We've gotta bring that to the registry.
okay, I didn't understand the difference between the two different kinds of courts.
I don't know the difference
Okay. then it
either.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's, I don't know why, there's a difference
Okay.
and what the difference is, but
So maybe,
The declaration was supposed to have been filed originally. And in land court
oh, it was,
anyways,
and it just
it
was,
just, yeah, so.
well, okay. So if the three of us could quickly at the end of the meeting. We'll get see that.
and if you wanna bring it back to me, I'll contact Elaine and have her come at her convenience.
And we probably only need 3 though, right?
I don't know, it's got everybody's.
Got everybody's name.
Oh, okay.
Like,
So I know most of our stuff, it's 3. If we have 3, we're
Yeah.
good.
We just followed suit with the original, how the rich.
It has all 4 of us on it, so.
That's how it was laid
We'll
out.
go into it.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay, vacant seat, I apologize, I had the flu and then was out of town, I got it. My grandson's got it, my son got it, my boyfriend got it, so we were waylaid, so I haven't done anything, but I do
Yeah,
have
I've been putting feelers out, but I haven't.
I have a lead on
Yeah.
somebody, so, but I just haven't had. So, we have Rachel's staff report. Most of which, all of which is very good and helpful. One thing I was wondering, we talked about using the shared regional housing service where we have some consulting time to look at the criteria for the trust or the town buying sort of one-off properties.
Yeah,
Is that still being,
I asked them to work on that. That was recent. They had some other projects on the table. But I can follow up with them, but they said, yes, they would be,
yeah,
they
I
could do
thought so.
that.
I just wondered how
Yes.
that was, okay.
Yeah.
And I see where the lease to locals RFP went out and they're due back.
Yes, yes.
Have we
that's
had some
exciting.
interest? Have we had some interest?
We do. I don't know how much. I don't know how many companies out there do this type of work,
Right,
but there's at least one company interested who will be submitting our.
great. Good, so we can get that,
response.
get that going. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Busy,
Yes, yeah,
all these meetings, like.
yeah, all the
Meeting, like,
meetings, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Okay,
We're also having the shared housing services look at our inclusionary zoning bylaw,
mhm,
which is the bylaw that basically says if you do. A project that's creating 5 or more units, certain percentage have to be affordable or workforce. We wanted them to look at it because to make sure that it's as usable as possible and that there's any, if there's any changes, best practices since we did it. So we'll get some feedback. That may be another adjustment to zoning that we might want to do, but
for next year. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anything else for the good of the discussion today?
Does anybody know anything about tiny house? There was a new update, I think, in the housing bill about tiny homes. I heard something about it, anyway.
Yes,
I
so
didn't find out any details.
The Eastham's designated as a seasonal community, and one of the requirements will be or is to have a tiny homes bylaw. So,
Probably next year, we have all this
Yeah.
year, so. Yeah, and that just came, I mean, that's just passed, so it's not anything.
yeah, they
they
haven't,
ex-
the
expect
state
this year.
hasn't, right, the state hasn't put out all of their guidance yet.
Yeah.
They've just put together a seasonal communities board, so they'll be working on those types of things.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. That'd be very good. Okay, anything else? No, all right, motion to adjourn,
So moved?
all in favor?
Second.
Aye. Okay.